What is up, guys? Welcome back to Superhumanity, and today we're going to be going over what I think are the best books to start reading Batman. How to start reading Batman. This is actually part 2 of a series I started with my How to Start Reading Superman video, and in that video I kind of go over the system of how I organize the books. I want to go over it really quick right now, and then we'll get into the list. So there's 3 categories: origin stories, status quo adventures, and endings. And they're kind of self-explanatory. Origin stories are like how they start being a hero. Status quo adventures, kind of a weird name of the category, but it's like everything kind of in their prime of their career when they're just being themselves as a superhero. And then endings are just stories that change the status quo in such a dramatic fashion that they're kind of an end of an arc. Or sometimes it's when the hero retires. That's kind of how they end. And then at the end of each listing, I will give a reader friendliness score from 1 to 10. 10 being like, this is super easy to read if you've never read any other comic books before. And 1 being you'd have to like read an entire catalog of everything to understand what's going on. Now, because this is an intro video, the reader friendliness scores on these books are going to typically be pretty high out of 10. So that's good. You usually won't really have to worry about that part, but I thought it was a nice touch to like my little ranking system. And that should be everything. So without further ado, let's get into some Batman books. Okay, let's get into origin stories. Batman Year One. Batman Year One is an elegant and grounded introduction not only to Batman, but also to his greatest ally in the GCPD, Commissioner Gordon. The story opens with both of them arriving at Gotham, Bruce Wayne returning from his long hiatus spent training, and Jim Gordon coming in as a brand new transfer cop from Chicago. Year One details the journey that these two new kids on the block, so to speak, go on to become the heroes that we know them as today. They operate on opposite sides of the law, but they're both fighting evil. Batman fights crime on the streets, and Gordon fights corruption. Importantly, this book is very focused on Batman's development into an urban legend, and shies away from the more fantastical elements of his mythos. Most of the books on this list are going to be like that, but I don't want anyone thinking that I only like the super grounded version of Batman. I do love me some good, zany Batman. But, all that said, these books serve as a great intro, especially if your primary introduction to the character has been the movies. Because, the past few decades of Batman cinema have given us very grounded takes. Now, there are some aspects of this book, especially when it comes to Gordon's character arc, that a lot of people don't like, but I'm actually fully on board with the twists and the turns that Frank Miller takes us on with the plot. The story is compelling and sometimes tragic, but ultimately triumphant. And David Mazzucchelli's art is wonderful. Mazzucchelli? I don't know how to say his name. But his art is simple and always expressive, and it really just feels like Gotham. It is a quiet highlight of the whole experience. But yeah, Batman Year One is the definitive origin story of the Batman. I would easily recommend this book to anyone. It's more than just a comic book, honestly. It's an amazing representation of the legend behind an important icon of American culture. It is the origin of Batman. Now, for reader friendliness, I'm giving this one a 10 out of 10. It's narrated by the main characters, so it's very immersive, and it serves as an origin story, so you get to meet a lot of the characters with the protagonists. It's super awesome, super easy to understand, and it is just goated. 10 out of 10. Okay, so Year One was the only origin story I had on the list, so now we are jumping right into status quo adventures. Starting with Batman The Long Halloween. Now, if you've ever spoken to me in person, you've probably heard of Long Halloween. I talk about this book all the time. It's by the absolute GOATs, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, who also did Superman for All Seasons, which I talked about in my How to Start Reading Superman video. So the main thing to know when going over The Long Halloween is that both the Christopher Nolan and Matt Reeves Batman movies are based pretty much on this book. The whole I believe in Harvey Dent thing is totally from Long Halloween. Now, I'm putting this one as a status quo adventure because it kind of shows Batman while he's already in the middle point of his career, but it also kind of acts as an origin story because it shows the turning point in Gotham where the power went from the organized crime families to the meta-human villains, the superpowered supervillains. Now, the main story of this book follows Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and Harvey Dent as they desperately try to solve the mystery of Holiday, this new serial killer in Gotham who kills on holidays. And spoiler alert, It's not Calendar Man. Holliday's crimes are centered on Gotham's two crime families, the Falcones and the Maronis. And the drama between the two families and Batman and the GCPD is really thrilling in this book. It totally delivers as a detective story. The mystery and the intrigue are incredibly entertaining, and Tim Sale's art is fantastic. It's beautiful in a way that comic book art rarely achieves. So if you're going to read any book on this list, I think I recommend this one most of all. Especially if you're just like a moviegoer, this is totally the book to read. It has influenced Batman movies for a long time, and I'm sure it's going to keep doing that. So honestly, just like knowing Long Halloween gives you such an advantage, and it makes the movies way more enjoyable. For reader friendliness score, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Because it assumes you have at least a little bit of knowledge about Gotham and like Batman's villains, but it's still pretty easy to get into. And honestly, anyone you don't know, you can just Google them. But yeah, it's still high score, 8 out of 10. I love Long Halloween. Super, super, super recommended this book. It is so good. Everyone should read Long Halloween. Okay, next on the list, Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. This book is not really a comic book. I would call it a visual poem, if that makes any sense. I have a lot of thoughts about this book, and I actually made a whole video, or it's a podcast episode about it with my brother. You should totally go check that out. It was super fun. So the gist of the story is the Joker and the other inmates of Arkham Asylum stage a coup of sorts, and they kind of take control of the asylum, and Batman has to venture inside to figure all that out. And interspersed with Batman's journey, we read excerpts of Amadeus Arkham's journal, which chronicles his tragic path towards repurposing his house into the asylum. Now, Grant Morrison's writing tends to be disjointed and kind of psychological, and this book is absolutely no exception. In many ways, I think this is Morrison's magnum opus. I read this book over and over again, and it hits hard every single time. And Dave McKean's art is insane. It is incredible and unlike anything you will ever see in any other comic book. I love doing videos instead of podcasts because I get to show you guys what this actually looks like. I think the dark majesty of it all just gives like a sense of legitimacy to the story and to Batman in general. I could look at this book all day long. Now really this book is about mysterious symbols. Everything means something. In the same way that you can kind of scrutinize every line in a poem and pull out all kinds of meanings, every panel in this book is a poem in itself. When I first started this channel, I really wanted to do a video essay on this book, but like honestly, I couldn't figure out what to talk about because there's just so much good material. So that's why I made the episode with my brother, but like, dude, I love Arkham Asylum. It is such a crazy book. So if you want to read something that you'll be thinking about for a long time, Arkham Asylum is a great option, especially because it's not that long of a read. I can usually get through it in under an hour, and it is just such a blast. I wish everyone had read this book so I could just have a deep dive conversation about it with everybody like all day long. And so for this book, I'm not going to give it a reader friendliness score because it's honestly just not like a typical reading experience. It's not like, I don't want to glaze it like beyond reality, but you kind of just got to go in and read the book and kind of see what it's like. Like, I would give it like a 0 or 100 reader friendliness score because it doesn't really matter how much Batman you know. It's already just like, dang, crazy trippy. And that leads us to the next status quo adventure book, Batman Dark Patterns. So this one was actually recommended to me on Instagram by Cape and Cowl Cafe, the GOAT. I love his YouTube channel. You guys go check him out. And several weeks ago, I picked it up while I was in Colorado at my wife's family's house. And actually, it was right after recording my suspension of disbelief video with like Robin on the thumbnail. I just went to the comic store after that, grabbed Dark Patterns, and I read it all that night. And it was so good. Love it. So basically, it's a very grounded detective Batman story of 4 mysteries in Gotham that he has to solve. They seem to all be separate, unconnected cases until he starts to uncover the truth behind a new evil force in Gotham. This could easily be adapted into a banger show. It introduces original characters, but something that I love even more is how it introduces sides of Gotham that you don't usually get to see. Like, you get to go to the suburbs of Gotham in this book, and it's like, whoa, that's crazy. And there's a whole scene, there's like a whole chapter in this old, broken down apartment building. Dude, it's crazy. But yeah, a big strength of this book is the treatment of Batman's influence on everyday citizens of Gotham, where you really get to see the Caped Crusader through their eyes, and it is absolutely awe-inspiring. The art is by Hayden Sherman, the guy who does Absolute Wonder Woman, and while there are some things about the art I'm not crazy about, most of it is like super sick. I really love the way he does paneling. Like, it's super creative. It's just a banger. I've only read Dark Patterns one time, but I absolutely love it. It is both fresh and an instant classic. One of the things that makes this book so easy to recommend is how grounded it is, and it totally feels like something you can see on the big screen, which I think is really helpful for new readers. So for a reader friendliness score, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10 because it does assume, again, a rudimentary knowledge of Batman and Gotham. But honestly, again, it's not that deep. Like, if you don't know somebody, you can just Google them. But yeah, Dark Patterns, incredible. Okay, so with those out of the way, let's move on to our endings. Now, just like origin stories, there's going to only be one book in this category, but it's a total banger, so let's get into it. The Dark Knight Returns. This is Frank Miller's take on Batman coming out of retirement in his mid-50s. And honestly, the book makes it seem like that's like super old. I mean, my parents are in their 50s and they're not that old, but whatever. If you're doing Batman stuff, I guess it's pretty old. Anyway, Frank Miller really hits it out of the park with this story. It is one of the most iconic Batman stories of all time. I would say in equal importance with All-Star Superman. Like, it's seriously so iconic. A huge strength of this book is that both the plot and art is by Frank Miller, meaning that the direction is very unified. It kind of feels like one cohesive vision. This is something I love to see in comics. Two other guys who do this a lot are Daniel Warren Johnson and Jeff Lemire. They don't always do their own art, but when they do, it's like mega peak. Like, bro, DWJ's run on Transformers was like insanely good. So this book has a lot to offer longtime Batman fans as well as new readers. There's an incredible Batman-Superman fight, like honestly the best of all time if you ask me. There's a crazy Batmobile in this book, and a renaissance of like Batman's most threatening villains as well as some new villains. Now, this is an Elseworld story, so it's like outside the main continuity, and it's pretty alternative to the more traditional take on Batman's aging. Like, it doesn't feature the Bat family pretty much at all, and it kind of alludes to some past Robins, but it mainly focuses on Carrie, this new Robin, who like takes up the mantle herself, and then Batman just kind of like accepts her and takes her in. So I feel like a big Robin fan. This might not totally be your cup of tea, but I really enjoyed this book. Dark Knight Returns is a celebration of Batman's strengths and weaknesses. And there is a lot to love about this book far beyond just the action. This book helped restore Batman's popularity back in the 80s, and it definitely holds up today. So for reader friendliness score, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. Once again, it's a pretty high score, but it does kind of rely a lot on the relationship Batman has with Gotham and his villains, and your reading of it can be bolstered by having experience with those stories already. That said, it's goated, and you should just read it anyways because it's peak. And that concludes my How to Start Reading Batman list of books. I know it's a very small list, so if you guys have any books that I missed that are great for beginners, please leave them in the comments below. I love having conversations with y'all down there. For everyone who's been subscribing and commenting, thank you so much. It means a ton to me to see interactions happening on my videos. I know I'm obviously super small just starting out, but this YouTube thing has been super fun so far. I love you guys, and this has been great. So, I think that's everything. 2 videos this week, that's pretty fun. Yeah. I will see y'all later.